Hi, everyone, and welcome to the season 2 of the Emazing Tennis Podcast. In this season, I will be interviewing a lot of coaches and a lot of players that have been on tour or are on tour currently and their insights and experiences of what it is to be on a professional tour. Hey, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Emazing Tennis Podcast Season 2. Today, we're going to have Samantha Crawford. She is a U.S. tennis player and she reached the highest ranking of 98 in the world. She won the U.S. Open Juniors in 2012. She stopped playing in the fall of 2017 and had a big knee surgery in 2018. She didn't play another tournament until January of 2022 and played through the summer of 2023. In the gap where she didn't play, she started working on her college degree, had a job in tech media for 2.5 years, and did some coaching on the side. She graduated with her BA in business administration from UF in December of 2022, and she's been 2023-2024 season an assistant coach at Oklahoma State University. And today in this podcast episode, we're going to talk about her experiences as a player, how she felt with all the pressure and expectations and the life on tour, the highs and lows, the mental challenges. And she's going to give you some great tips on coaching and on scheduling and just on playing. Hope you guys are going to enjoy this episode. Hi, Samantha.
Hi, Emma. Thanks for having me. It's fun to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. We're going to have this is going to be just a fun conversation. I'm really excited to hear, your story. As I mentioned to you, this season for me is going to be just about talking either to the current players or to the players that were on tour and just kind of your experience. And, you're a big time player. I always looked up to you and to your game. And, your biggest achievement is winning the US Open Juniors, right? And then reaching the highest ranking in 2016 as 98 in the world, which is amazing. So
Thank you.
just tell us a little bit more, and obviously then you had to stop because of the injury. But I honestly, before everything, I want to know more about that experience of you winning the US Open Juniors. How did that feel? And after that, did you put a lot of pressure on yourself on to perform better after?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, that summer I was 17 and I had a good summer. I was playing challenger tournaments and I think I finaled in one and they were 50Ks then. So it would have been a 60 now, I think. Or they've changed it again, I'm sure.
Yeah, all the time.
But and I won a doubles title and yeah, I think so. I got a wild card into the qualifying of the women's and ended up qualifying. And I lost my first round match to Laura Robson. And that was 2012. So it was the London Olympics year. So I remember playing at night and just being so nervous and just excited all at the same time. And then yeah, after qualies, I played doubles because me and my partner won hard courts and got a wild card into women's doubles. And then juniors came the third week, which was the last week there. And I'd already been there for 2 weeks already. So I kind of felt super comfortable. And I was a wild card again into juniors and kind of wasn't really expecting anything. But I feel over those first 2 weeks, it kind of carried into the third week and everything just kind of fell into place. And it was not I even went in expecting to have that kind of US Open experience. And yeah, I mean, I think winning the juniors was crazy. And the question they ask you is oh, do you think you're going to win the actual one day? And of course you're yes, but it's so different. And I think I always never did well with defending points and defending past results. It kind of was very looming, it always loomed over me and was not something I really enjoyed. But so I definitely did put a lot of pressure on myself, I think. And I turned pro shortly after that, and it kind of is a different pressure being a junior versus being pro and having more responsibilities, like really thinking about your schedule. And I think it's easy when you're young to want to play like every single tournament every single week. And sometimes I think like it's not the best to do that, just like depending on where you're at, like physically and mentally. And I think that's something you kind of learn like as you get older.
Yeah, so then after that, did you go on tour immediately, or did you go to college or no?
No, I turned pro like right before I turned 18.
Okay.
And then I started school like after I got injured and
Mm-hmm.
I knew I was going to have like a really big knee surgery. And um, I promised my dad like I would finish school if I didn't go like when I was, 18. So I kept my promise, but I definitely talked my way out of it for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's such a tough decision as like a 17, 18-year old. And I mean, I have friends that turn pro like even younger,
Yeah.
which is kind of crazy because I just think you're so naive in some ways and you think like, oh, it's going to work out, and you never know how things are going to be with injuries and that sort of thing. And um, I think like college tennis is like really great now. I think there's like so many more opportunities that you have now than when I was even like being recruited. And
Yeah.
I think like when I was being recruited, it was like, oh, you can go play like 5 pro tournaments a year. And it kind of wasn't really worth it to me then because I was already, getting into bigger tournaments and I had like a decent ranking by then and experience and just like kind of sponsorships I wouldn't have had if I had gone to college. But I think that's like very different now, which is great.
Yeah, now, I mean, even when I played, I went from 2011 to 2015, like, and I just went back to Baylor to like visit, and I just hear like the different, the opportunities that they have and the money that they get. And like, you
Right.
can play this amount pro tournaments, the college pays for you. I'm like, what?
Yeah. It's a lot.
It's like a
It's a lot different
no-brainer
now.
to me to
Yeah.
go to
Right.
college, and give it a shot. I don't know why somebody wouldn't want to do it now, you know?
Yeah.
But so like looking back, would you do the same or you would do it differently? Like would you go to
Um,
college or no? As
right.
from your experience
I
now.
don't know. I've thought about this and I think like I never got to experience like playing in the college environment, but like this past year I got to see it like from a coaching standpoint. And I think like my personality and like I'm not very like I don't know, I'm not very like confrontational, and college tennis is so much louder and there's
Yeah.
always something going on. And I
Yeah.
think I don't know that I would have done the best in that. Like I think you always adapt to like whatever situation you're in. But I don't know that I would have gone to college and necessarily like gotten better. But I think in other ways I would have too, like as a human and as a person and just like maturing. Like I think I've always kind of been a bit younger than like my peers, like mentally, and I've had injuries and that sort of thing. So I just think if the timing was a little different, maybe, but I think the way things worked out, like no, like I don't really regret like turning pro. If it was like 5 years later, then maybe I would have.
Yeah.
But I think like the opportunities that I had, like I don't regret it. And I think I always told myself like I know I'm gonna do school again, and I think that's like invaluable. And having your education paid for is something you can't really like take for granted at all. So I was fortunate like to be able to do school after the fact, but I definitely think that's something that you can't really like take for granted at all.
Yeah, I agree. So then how long did it take you to break into top 100?
It took a little bit. I broke into top 100 in 2016. I technically turned pro in 2013.
Okay.
So I think I played like qualies of um, like Wimbledon in either 20, I think 2014, I want to say. Um, and then towards the end of 2015, I won the US Open wild card, like the playoff that they have for
Yeah.
like Americans. And then at the end of that year, I also won the Australian Open one.
Okay.
So in 2016, like I played main draw of Australia, and I had like a really good run in Brisbane, like one of the weeks before. And that kind of set me up to break into the top 100 like that summer. I broke into the top 100 after winning my first round at Wimbledon, I think. Um, but I didn't play that whole summer. I actually broke my hand during a
Oh
fall
my God.
in Charleston, and kind of wasn't able to play like all the clay court tournaments before the French. And I ended up playing the French, and then I just felt like I wasn't ready. So I didn't play any like warm up tournaments before Wimbledon, and like went back and did like occupational therapy is what you do like for your hand and your wrist and stuff, and like all these like little strengthening exercises. And then yeah, I played all the slams that year. But it took me a couple years to really like, I think, break into that top 100 and even like top 150. I think it's not like an easy jump sometimes, and I think and for some it is and for some it isn't. I think like with me, like I've always had so many injuries and just like bad luck with injuries and timing sometimes. Because like I feel like even that year I was playing so well like at the beginning of the year, and then I like happened to break my hand like just by falling like in a match, and not even able to play like most of that summer. And I think that injuries like affect your confidence like so much. And you just don't get the rhythm of like playing matches all the time and just like learning like what you learn in every single match. So it definitely wasn't like a straightforward path of like having like a good junior career per se, and then like transitioning into pros like really, really quickly. I think it
Yeah.
was more gradual, and then I did have some like good wins and results, and then like injuries would trickle in here and there. And then yeah, towards the end of 2017, like really kind of got worse. So yeah, definitely not a straight shot by any means.
Today's video is sponsored by Lucky in Love. Gone are the days of ladies' golf and tennis apparel that all look the same. Lucky in Love is ushering in a new age. The high-end women's apparel brings options fit for the modern, expressive woman. Partake in the ultimate luxury and shop Lucky in Love for your new favorite fashion items for women, and use code EB20 to get 20% off your next purchase. I don't think there is a straight shot for anyone. I mean, maybe the 1%, I don't know. But like
Right.
a lot of players, like, it they need to embrace the journey, the process, right? Like, it's not just gonna happen overnight. It's like, and like you said, you play this year, but you have to defend next year, and it's like, in
Yes.
tennis, you gotta keep going. You cannot just like, oh, you have a great tournament. Wow. Okay, but you have to play and show up next week, and then next week, and next week, and next week. And it's literally showing up week in, week out, and then the next year, and trusting in your journey, in the process. But you see a lot of players that are stuck between like 200 and 500 for a long time. So I haven't been playing in 8 years, and I stopped when I was 460 singles, 140 in doubles, and then I stopped, and then I came back now this year, as you've seen me now. But I
Right.
still see like some of the same players they're playing, they're still stuck in that like 200, 300 range. So what do you
Right.
think like separates the player that's like around that like 300, 400, 500 for a while, than the one that's breaks through in the top 100? What separate? What do you think? Is it a level? Is it a mental? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can vary. I think consistency is like a huge thing, like just being able to consistently like win some matches even when you're not feeling great. And I think that sometimes has to do with like confidence and like almost just like belief. Like I've been in this situation before, and like I know I'm gonna find my way out of it. And I think that just comes sometimes with like playing a lot and getting out of tough situations. I think, but I think overall, like the consistency is like there for the players that like are in the top 100 and stay in the top 100. Um, because you just know like any match that they lose like is probably it's going to be like a tough out. Like it's not you're not going to have like the match handed to you. There's not going to be like as many loose points or like loose errors, like return wise or serve wise. Like it's just every point is like more relentless, I feel like.
Mm.
And I just see that. I think that's like the biggest thing for me. Like I just see like the level is higher for like a longer period of time, like during matches. Um, I think a lot of times, like in challengers, you'll see like someone wins the first set, like really, like, not that it doesn't happen like at the top, but you'll see someone win a first set super easily, and then they lose a second set like super easily.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just like levels like dropping sometimes. And there's obviously like momentum shifts and everything in tennis, but I think like the top players are just able to hold like their level for longer, and their base level is just higher. So, um, like even when they're having a bad day, it's never like that much worse than like their normal day, you know?
Yeah.
And I think in the challengers, you can see like someone have like a terrible, terrible match, and then they'll play amazing like the next day. And you kind of like, and I think that comes with like experience too, just kind of knowing like, okay, maybe I'm not feeling great today, like, but I know like I'm just gonna hit like all my returns middle and then go from there. And like I'm not gonna give away like easy points just because like I don't feel great like with how I'm hitting and whatnot.
That's interesting because I'm coming back now and I'm trying to figure it out. I mean, 8 years is a long time, and I'm playing
Yeah,
these tournaments, and I feel like over the years, like the tennis has gotten better. Like in a way, it's like you, whoever I played, they're playing good. Like there's no one player that I can say, okay, that was like an easy match, and I kind of like threw
right,
myself in there, like I'm not going and playing 15s to get points. Like I'm kind of risking it and going 35s, 50, 70, 75, just like to see, okay, can I do this, right? And you see, it's like I don't know. It's like I'm right there when I'm playing a girl that's 200, but then I lose to a girl that's 700, or like, I'm like,
right,
it's like I'm like right there, but I'm not. I don't know how to describe. Like I feel like
right,
if I don't use that one or two opportunities that I have against good players, then like I'm not gonna get it again. Like, okay, your opportunity is gone.
right,
Like they're not gonna give you the second chance. So
right.
it's just about like you said, the consistency in matches, consistency in week in, week out, showing up. But is it also like, does it play a big role of like scheduling and choosing what tournaments to play? Do you think that's a big factor as well, or?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think there's all, I mean, I think I always had places where I would play better than other places. And I think like it's easy to have that mindset of like, I want to get matches in and I want to, and I think there is like a time for that. But I also think there's some weeks where like, if like, I don't really like going to this one place and I don't really ever play well there, like you shouldn't feel like you have to play there.
Yeah.
And I think that's like something that's not easy to like kind of decide for yourself sometimes. Like I think because I think as a competitor, like you always want to give yourself like a chance to compete and play and see how you do.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you do have to do that. Sometimes like I think during right moments, like you need to force yourself to play. Um, but I think yeah, I just think there, if I could go back, I think there's tournaments where I wouldn't go back, like in altitude. Like
Yeah.
I never played well in altitude.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and there always used to be this one tournament in altitude, and for some reason I would go, there would be like an indoor tournament the week before, and then it would like be straight outside to altitude. And for some reason I was always like, I'm gonna go and play in altitude. And I would like hit the fence.
Is it
So,
the
um,
Albuquerque one? And is it that one?
yes,
Oh God.
Albuquerque.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
played there
it
too.
used to always be after Quebec City, which was like indoors. The ball like didn't bounce up, like stayed super low.
Yeah.
And then yeah, I would go to Albuquerque like literally the week after, and I would be like, why am I playing terrible? And then like as I got older, I was like, it's because it was altitude, and like I just never really did well in altitude, it would take me like a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was like Vegas the week after, and I would always play way better in Vegas because
Yeah.
it was like less.
Yeah.
And so I think like in the moment, those things are kind of like hard to know like right away until like after you've done it, like maybe a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they don't have that tournament anymore, so it's like
Yeah.
not, it wasn't an option anymore. But yeah, I think like in those scenarios, it kind of is more damaging to like your confidence because like I think it's hard to realize like why am I not playing well? Like I've put
Yeah.
in the work, like I've doing the right things, and I think sometimes it just happens. Like some people play better on clay, some people play better on hard, and I think those decisions are become important because I think ultimately if you're feeling like you're playing well, even if you're losing, like it's much better than going and losing and feeling like, wow, I like can't even like keep up with this player or like I feel terrible on the clay right now. Like, I think it just there's times where you just need to pick like where you're going to be happier and where you think you're going to do better.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think scheduling is huge, and I think also like how many tournaments you're playing back to back can get to be a lot. Like, and there's some girls that love playing like a lot of tournaments back to back, and they want the matches, they need matches, and like for me, I found like 4 weeks was like even too much like in a row. And I think just because I would get little injuries here and there, and I think that took me a long time to realize too. So like 3 weeks for me in a row
Yeah.
is like a lot. And I think I didn't realize that until I was like hadn't played and then tried to play again,
Yeah.
kind of not as long as you, but still like a considerable like gap of time. And I think yeah, you can end up being like, well, I want to make like the most of every opportunity. But the great thing is like there's always tournaments, and
Yeah.
I feel like yeah, it's super easy to get caught up in like, well, if I don't play this tournament, then like what? Like I could do well and get points and
Yeah.
blah blah blah. But
But then you get burnt out
yeah,
and then the
it
injuries come and then
yeah,
it's like this
right.
whole thing. But then you want it, you want it, you want it. But like how do you decide that? Like how important it is to like to have a coach at or like of course it's important, but like I've been talking to a lot of people, some say like, oh, you don't need anybody right now, like you need to figure out yourself, you need to do it on your own, until you break at like 500, and then if you want somebody to get you to top 200, then yes, but like
Right.
this level, like to get to like 500, you can do it on your own, you can analyze your game, you can, but how important do you think it is to have somebody? Because obviously we all know financially you're not making money at these tournaments, so you're like
Right.
breaking even or in minus if you're not winning much, and then it's hard to provide for yourself, let alone to like have somebody come with you. So like
Right.
in your opinion, like is it worth it, like investing in having somebody with you during this time, or it's not worth an investment?
I'm kind of divided. Like, I think it's super important to have like your home base and someone that you work with, like when you're, training at home, and someone that can kind of help look at your schedule and kind of help you make decisions and kind of gauge with you like where you're at. Like, I think it's always great to have like more than just your own opinion because I think it's easy to like make yourself overdo things or underdo things. Like
Yeah.
I think having someone that has an outside perspective knows like, okay, like I think you should push yourself like a little bit more here, or
Yeah.
you're doing too much, like you need to pull away a little bit. Like I think that is very important, like especially when you're training or even deciding like where you're going. I think like match and tournament standpoint, I think it depends. Like I think it's super tough when you're gone for like a few weeks at a time and you feel like you're not improving like on anything, and you don't have someone to even like work on, like maybe you didn't feel great like hitting returns or something, like someone to work on like little things. I think that's tough. Like, but I think ultimately like it's a trade-off. Like it just gets so expensive like traveling with an extra person and like worrying about how much that costs, and like for, if you're not even, winning a round, like you're just going to be in the negatives like all the time. And I think
Yeah.
that like adds like a different level of pressure as well. So I think it just depends. Like, I think more important for me is like having that perspective, just helping you make the decisions. And I think when you go to tournaments, like it's pretty straightforward. I think just when you go for back to back weeks, like you can end up losing confidence by not working on little things. But I think ultimately, if you're playing okay and like you're feeling good and you have that good like home base, you don't necessarily need that like right away.
Yeah.
But I think it's always nice to have, but it's if it adds more pressure, it's like not worth it, kind of, in my
Exactly. Yeah.
opinion.
Exactly. And there's no right or wrong answer in any of these. It's literally
No, not at all. No.
for everyone it works differently, right? You're a different person than I am. Things work for you differently than for me. And it's like the more I'm doing this, the more I'm like it's so important to know yourself and to be self-aware
Yes.
and to take the responsibility for your own for the actions and everything instead of
Yeah,
always trying to
100%.
find reasons or answers in somebody else that somebody is gonna figure it out for
Right.
you, right?
Right.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of players get caught up in that it's like, oh, well, maybe this coach is gonna do this, or maybe now I'm gonna,
Right.
like, but at the end of the day, when you take the responsibility for your own self, then you see the results, start
Right. Definitely.
happening.
And I think that gives you like more confidence as well. Like I think
Yes, yes,
whenever you're taking control of all of, what you can control, like
yeah,
you have that inner confidence in yourself of I'm making these decisions, like, and that's what I think is amazing about tennis. Like it's pretty much on you, like, whenever you're playing a match, like, and I think I always love that. Like if I won, it was because of me. If I lost, like it was probably because of me.
yeah,
So
yeah,
like,
yeah,
I think that's something that tennis is like just like really exhilarating and like gives you that sense of confidence that you can't find like really easily. Like, so,
yeah,
um, yeah, I think that's like a great part of taking control of like your own career, but always like having, outside input and,
yeah,
taking that into consideration as well.
yeah. So, in from your experience, from your coaches, what's the best tennis advice you've ever gotten from somebody?
Um, God, that's such
It's so
that's such a
tough.
tough question. I know. Um, I think tennis is like very individual and it's easy to kind of feel like why haven't I done well, or why haven't I won this tournament, or why haven't I, it's always you always see like how everyone else is doing. And I think like one of my coaches like always told me like there's room for everyone, like you don't, like, and I think it's so true. Like I think everyone can believe in themselves and it's not going to happen for everyone, but I
Yeah,
think there is room for a lot of us. And I think when you kind of realize that, you don't take the losses as big. And I think, yeah, I think just having that kind of mindset of like, oh, I belong here and there's room for me here is like a huge just like confidence booster. And I think it takes a while to like feel like you belong and all this kind of stuff. Like I think when I was younger, I was very timid and shy and kind of, doubted whether I was good enough. And I think a lot of people feel like that. And I think when once you get past that, it's like very liberating. And but yeah, I think just knowing you belong and that there's room for you to be like good and showcase like what you're capable of is probably like some of the best advice I've gotten, and just kind of tied in with like believing in myself and that sort of thing. Um, I think also just I had a coach who would always be like, the sun's going to come up tomorrow. Like, I'm still going to have dinner tonight and like, have a good night, even though like you lost your match. Like, even like in juniors when I was like devastated over losing like a 12 under match for like no reason.
yeah,
So, like, I think that is like a good perspective to have as well. Like, just always knowing like there's another match, there's another tournament. And I think it's hard to take that to heart and like follow that all the time, because I think it's really easy to get caught up in the highs and lows in
Yeah.
tennis. But I think the more like even keeled you can stay, and kind of just trusting your journey and your process, is super important, because it's a grind, and it's like all year round. And majority of the weeks, like, you're not going to win. Like, so I think just not taking the losses is as seriously sometimes is super important.
I agree, but I recently spoke to somebody and I'm like, I don't want to get used to losing. Like
No, not at
I don't
all.
want to be
No.
okay with losing. I'm like, God, I've been losing like so
Yeah.
much more than I would like to, right? But it's like, okay,
Right.
I improved, I worked on this, I'm working on this, but I
Right.
lost again. Like, okay, you know, so it's like so many times it's so tough to trust that process, to
Oh
trust
yeah.
that journey. That's why a lot of people don't make it and they quit and they give up. And I feel like in tennis, especially, the one that persevere are the one that make it, right?
Yeah,
So,
it's true.
and but it's like, and I thought like that,
Yeah.
yeah, don't you agree with that?
Yeah, I think we all have to be, I think we're all like a little bit crazy,
Yeah,
like I
yeah,
I mean, it's not fun losing. And I mean, I remember I would lose matches and I literally would like go sit in my room and like not want to talk to anyone. Like, I was just like would be so like just
yeah,
devastated. But I think that's like, I think it's okay to like sit with your loss for a little bit, and I think you always need to process it, and it's never gonna feel like great, which
yeah,
it shouldn't. Like, you should never be happy about losing.
yeah,
But I think just being like so up and down with losses is not good. Like, because then you're just expending so much like emotional energy and like in the losses,
yeah,
and then I think that just like translates into like everything in your life.
yes,
Um, and I think that's like, I think it's learning like how to process your losses where it's not like affecting like every area of your life. Like,
yeah,
I think that's like super important, because I think I definitely had losses where I was like not the same person for like a week probably.
yeah,
And then it becomes too much, and that's not sustainable. And I think it's very easy to start hating tennis. And I think
yeah,
that's when people kind of get to the point of, why am I doing this like to
yeah,
myself? But I think if you like look at losses like the right way, and like you said, like, you improved in this area and you have things to work on, like that's the most important part. Like, I think if you lose a match and you're like, well, I don't think I can get better at anything, then that's kind of like a breaking point in my opinion. So I think that's just looking at it the right way and always taking like the positives is like the most important part. But yeah, I think we're all just a little bit crazy, because tennis is pretty brutal in that sense. Like, you're always losing.
yeah, you are. I
Even
mean,
if you
even at
have
the
a good
top.
week, like, if you,
Yeah,
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 if you, even if you had a good week, like, and you didn't win the tournament, like, you lost. So,
yeah,
um,
yeah, true.
yeah.
Today's episode is sponsored by MatchSet. MatchSet is an amazing company that provides players with incredible equipment and apparel. With MatchSet, equipment does matter, and they make sure it won't slow you down. Use code Tennis with Emma to get 10% of Match Tennis today. You would think everybody hates you, or everybody loves you. If you are winning, if you're losing, you let that define you. And like, it's different now for me, but there's still a little bit of that left in me.
Right.
Like, oh, I'm gonna be a
Right.
disappointment. Oh, people are gonna think I can't do this. Why are you doing this? But then I have to
Right.
bring myself back to the present. Okay, like, you're doing this for yourself. You're not doing this for anybody else,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
then not let it define you. But it's tough, and especially now with, I mean, the thing is, I'm putting myself out there on social media, right? And that was my
Right.
goal, to put the real side and the good side and the bad side, the reality of it. Like, it's not all
Right.
great all the time, and you know, um, but I just want to kind of like document this journey and like kind of like look back on it later and be like, oh, because a lot of times I forget things. I don't know if that happens with you, because we play
Right.
so much, we travel
Yeah.
so much that I'm like, I don't even know where I'm at or who I'm talking to or what just
Right.
happened. Right. So kind of like when I'm
Yeah, it's
documenting
true.
it, then it's like, I look back, I was like, oh, I remember that, or I learned something from that, or.
Right. Well, I think it's cool too to be able to look back and see different moments of like, oh wow, like I made so many improvements in that match or in that moment, and then look back like again and just keep, I don't think you'll regret like playing and putting yourself out there. Like it's not easy, and but I think ultimately like when you're older, and I've had the same thought, like I'm never gonna regret like playing and trying to play
Yeah.
again. Um, but yeah, I think it's tough for outside people to understand too. And I think yeah, that feeling of like I'm disappointing others and letting others down like is a huge thing.
Yeah.
I've definitely had that. And like my boyfriend doesn't play tennis. He's like
Okay.
an engineer, and we started dating like when I wasn't playing, and then I started playing again. I think he was very like didn't know what to expect, and was always great, but he would be like, it's okay. And I'd be like, it's not okay. When I lost, like, I'd be like, you don't like, you never saw
Yeah.
me like the first like 20, like whatever years of my life. Like and yeah, that feeling still like comes in. So I think it's just different, like having grown up, like playing, anything competitively. I think, um, yeah, not letting, I think when you do it for yourself though, that's like the most freeing thing you can like
Mm-hmm.
experience. So,
I agree.
I remember like I saw you the other week and I was like, it's so fun to see you playing again. And, it's not easy to even like get back to the point where you can play tournaments again. So the fact that you're like out there and competing, I think is like awesome. And like you said, doing it for yourself, like I think that's just priceless. So
Yeah, so are we gonna see you out there? Are you? Because
I don't know. I keep going back and forth. I think the other week I said there was like a 1% chance, and now it's maybe a bit higher.
oh,
So we'll
maybe we're
see.
at like
It
5.
depends on the week. Yeah, I know. Now we're at like 4.5, right? No,
Uh,
but I don't know. I think maybe I kind of want to play like one more tournament and be like, maybe this is like my last tournament.
yeah,
But
yeah.
then I feel like if I do well in the tournament, then I'm gonna be like, but what if I play like some more?
But what's your
So
protected ranking?
I think, I think it's 600,
Okay.
like 60 something.
So
Yeah,
can
I
you give
had
it to me if you don't
some
want to
points
use
drop
it?
off.
Can I have it?
Yeah, I mean, I totally get like not coming back with a protected,
Oh my.
because I did that when I came back and played like in 2022, I didn't have a protected at all. Um like and they've changed it. Like when I was injured, it was like you have to be top like 300, I think, to get a protected, and I had like dropped out. I would have not used it in time anyways, but
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I can get her protect. Like this is crazy, but it helps so much. It's crazy, like how much even like 600
It
helps.
does,
Like,
because you're in the main draw of some
yeah,
tournaments,
yeah,
like
exactly. Yeah,
you're
it's
skipping
crazy.
those 2 rounds in qualies that is like really hard on your body. I'm
Right.
like, I literally
No, I
like I'm
know.
playing the qualies. I'm like, oh, I had 2 really good matches and I won, and I'm like happy. I won, but I'm like, I'm only the first
Yeah,
round
I
of main,
know.
and I got like 2 points or something. So
Yeah,
it's tough, but you cannot get caught up on like on that also. You gotta just like keep working on your game and keep getting better, and
yeah,
ultimately, like, I don't know, my goal is to reach my full potential, to be like, okay, this is the best that I can play. I can't play better than this. And whatever, maybe that is 400 for
right.
me. Maybe, I don't know. Or maybe it's 100. I don't know. But I want to see what that full potential is, but it's tough. Like in practice is good, and I feel like I'm getting better. Then I go into a match and I feel like I take a step back, like I'm not playing the game that I'm working on. So it's like just going one step
Right.
forward, one step, 2 steps back, and it's constantly this, like, oh, you're playing to win or you're playing to get better, finding the balance between the both. you know, that's been really tough
Right.
for me, you know. Does everybody struggle with that? I think most.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think I always like thought like the when I came back after like, almost 5 years, I always felt like I'm playing like really well sometimes and like can see like the level.
Yeah.
But I think and I did, I made like a final and like a 15K and like a semis of a 25 and like I I think I got to like almost top 500 again. And then I started having like these expectations of like, well, why am I not doing better? And why am I not like where I was before?
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's kind of, yeah, just kind of balancing that, like, because then you don't play the same if you start having like, I think it's very easy to go into something and being like, well, I have nothing to lose. And you
Yeah.
play well and you have fun with it. And then as soon as you kind of change that, even like a little bit, like it changes so much, like
Yeah.
with how you play.
Yeah.
And I think it's like kind of gauging that and making sure you're like in touch with that. I kind of like had a hard time with that because I was like, I'm grinding out here and I'm not like getting the results that like I want. And yeah, and like I just think and physically it was like kind of tough. Like I had to manage load like on my knee and so I just feel like I wasn't able to play enough or train enough sometimes. So, but yeah, I think managing expectations when you're coming back is like a massive thing.
Well, anyways, we have to wrap up. Like this always happens in my podcast. We
Yeah,
talk, and I'm like, oh well, I didn't look at the
right.
questions or anything, which is how I wanted to go. Like
No, but that's yeah, it's more natural.
exactly,
That's good.
but uh, just two last questions. No, three. Where can the people listening find you online? Like, do you care if somebody follows you on Instagram?
Oh yeah, sure. My Instagram and I think my or X now is the same. It's both Sam Crawford 18
Okay, sounds good. And
on both. Yeah.
what's your favorite book that you would recommend to anyone? It doesn't have to be tennis related.
Oh, okay. Um, let's see. I was always like a huge Harry Potter like fan growing up. So definitely the Harry Potter books. Recently I read like this book called The Midnight Library, which it's kind of deep, but it was a good read. So definitely recommend that.
Okay.
But there's like some deep stuff in
Okay,
there, so
good,
like fair warning.
good. So, favorite quote.
Yeah, just kind of going along with what I said. Like I think it's easy to, you know, feel like you don't belong and like strive for like a level of perfection. So like this one quote is says, and now that you don't have to be perfect, you can be good. Um, and I think that's like kind of how I want to feel about things. And I think it's very easy. I've always been like kind of a perfectionist. So I think just realizing that you're never ever going to be perfect in
No,
anything, but you can be good or great even. And
yeah,
I think that's like pretty freeing.
I like that. I like that a lot. Um, I agree with it 100%. Well, we're out of time. I appreciate you taking your time today, and I hope to also see you playing at some of the tournaments in the future. You never know.
We'll see. Thank you for having me. It was so fun.
Thanks, Samantha. Thank you so much for supporting and listening to our podcast. Make sure to follow us on social media.
And be sure to listen to next week's episode of the Emazing Tennis Podcast.